We hit to record here. Okay, we're ready to go here. Waiting on Otter to kick in. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we're going to continue our study of the Urantia book. We're going to start a brand new paper, paper 132, the Sojourn at Rome. This is when Ganid and Jesus got to Rome, and the first thing they had to do is go see Caesar, which is kind of interesting because they had a message they had to deliver. Right. One more response here. Should be ready to go any second. Okay, here we go. Tell you what, I think I'll start reading tonight since I get so many people to sick. Let me change the screen first. Here we go. The Sojourn at Rome. Since Ganid carried greetings from the princes of India to Tiberius, Caesar, the Roman ruler, on the third day after their arrival in Rome, the two Indians and Jesus appeared before him. The morose emperor was unusually cheerful on this day and chatted long with the trio. And when they had gone from his presence, the emperor, referring to Jesus, remarked to the aide standing on his right, "If I had that fellow's kingly bearing and gracious manner, I would be a real emperor, huh?" So even Tiberius realized he was standing in front of greatness when Jesus was there. That's a pretty good compliment, I'd say.
Sense of humor.
Yeah, a sense of humor. This is a picture of a carving of him. And here's another. I got a whole bunch of these, a whole series of them in these slides, so you can look at them at your leisure. And I actually put a tag over the naughty parts on this one.
You didn't have to do that.
Yeah. Because the real picture is on the website. Okay, here we go. Do you feel like trying to read there? Do you feel like trying to read?
I'll try.
You don't have to.
Oops,
Unmute.
I clicked the wrong one.
Yeah. The mute button's over in the corner, right there.
Okay. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. While at Rome, Ganid had regular hours for study and for visiting places of interest about the city.
You sound like
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. Go ahead and
Okay.
get
I'm sorry.
Rodney, would you like to take this one?
Yes, no problem.
Thank you, Mark.
Hopefully. While at Rome, Ganid had regular hours for study and for visiting places of interest about the city. His father had much business to transact, and desiring that his son grow up to become a worthy successor in the management of his vast commercial interest, he thought the time had come to introduce the boy to the business world. There were many citizens of India in Rome, and often one of Ganid's own employees would accompany him as an interpreter so that Jesus would have whole days to himself. This gave him time in which to become thoroughly acquainted with the city of 2 million inhabitants. He was frequently to be found in the Forum, the center of political, legal, and business life. He often went up to the Capitolium and pondered the bondage of ignorance in which these Romans were held as he beheld this magnificent temple dedicated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. He also spent much time on Palatine Hill, where were located the emperor's residence, the temple of Apollo, and the Greek and Latin libraries.
So he was right there in the middle of everything, wasn't he? You know, all the important places, and got to see everything.
Downtown.
So, and he thought it was kind of ignorant of the people there because they dedicated temples to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. You know, these beings that didn't really exist. So, you could understand that. You have something to say, Jane?
No, I'm good.
Okay. And here's a picture, I believe, was what the left of that temple area. These pictures are really interesting. I urge y'all to go out to the website and download the slides. They got a lot of interesting things here. You can see the Capitolium here that they were just talking about, and other places they talk about in this paper. They have little pictures of what they would have looked like back then, and some descriptions of things like that. And this is the one that is up on a big mountain or hill. This is during the Archaic period, and some other interesting pictures here, the ruins and that sort of thing. So there's still a lot of things in Rome there that were left from 2,000 years ago. You know, the ruins. And there's Apollo, one of the gods they worship. And this is a this is a real interesting one. It's got about 32 different areas they point out in this map of the old Roman times.
Wow.
And,
it's very good.
Yeah, that some of them are really interesting. I'm not going to spend our study time going through them. We can go on from there. Letch, would you take the next one, please?
Okay. At this time, the Roman Empire included all of southern Europe, Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, and Northwest Africa, and its inhabitants embraced the citizens of every country of the Eastern Hemisphere. His desire to study and mingle with this cosmopolitan aggregation of Urantia mortals was the chief reason why Jesus consented to make this journey.
So he really looked forward to mixing with all the different kinds of people he could meet, you know, and this benefited him for what he needed to learn to go on with his bestowal. And my goodness, this is small. Jane, can you read that all right?
I can make it a bit larger, so I think I can. And yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I just want to make sure you could read it all right before we went on. Let me get it up here. Okay. Because I could take this one, you can take the next one. It's not much better though.
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
You want me to take this one? Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus learned much about men while in Rome, but the most valuable of all his manifold experiences of his 6-month sojourn in that city was his contact with and influence upon the religious leaders of the empire's capital. Before the end of the first week in Rome, Jesus had sought out and had made the acquaintance of the worthwhile leaders of the Cynics, the Stoics, and the mystery cults, in particular the Mithraic group. Whether or not it was apparent to Jesus that the Jews were going to reject his mission, he most certainly foresaw that his messengers were presently coming to Rome to proclaim the kingdom of heaven. He therefore set about in the most amazing manner to prepare the way for the better or more certain reception of their message. He selected 5 of the leading Stoics, 11 of the Cynics, and 16 of the mystery cult leaders, and spent much of his spare time for almost 6 months in intimate association with these religious leaders. And this was his method of instruction. Never once did he attack their errors or even mention the flaws in their teachings. In each case, he would select the truth in what they had taught and then proceed so to embellish and illuminate the truth that in their minds that the very short time this enhancement of truth effectively crowded out the associated error. And thus were the teachings Jesus taught men and women prepared for the subsequent recognition of additional and similar truths in the teachings of the early Christian missionaries. This was the early acceptance of the teachings of the gospel preachers, which gave that powerful impetus to the rapid spread of Christianity in Rome and from there throughout the empire. So Jesus literally prepared the way for the later Christian missionaries to come in, and he prepared groups of people so that they would accept this new gospel that the missionaries would teach right off the bat, which is kind
And
of
Roger,
nice. Yeah.
it should be pointed out that he did not attack what some of the errors
No, he
and
didn't.
beliefs.
And that's a very important point, Rodney, because when I first started reading the book, the tendency of everyone is to hit everybody over the head
Yeah.
with the book, isn't it?
That's what I did.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and I still do it unconsciously, probably. But the best way of teaching is to teach them the truths and not attack the things that are totally false. And the biggest problem I had working my way in was the atonement doctrine.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a tough one.
That's the hardest thing, because Christians are so integrated in those thoughts of atonement. When
Yeah.
you start teaching that they didn't need the atonement doctrine, that God the Father forgives sin, they just don't want to accept it. And I see it every day. When I make these slides that I put out, the inspirational slides, I've been putting out about a set a week of about 30 slides each week, and call them inspirational quotes. But even throughout all of those, almost every set at one point or another mentions the fact that God forgives sin. No atonement is necessary, even in these slides. It comes straight out of the book, all these quotes. So it's just interesting the way that works. Jane, would you like to take the next one again?
Okay.
Jane, I hate to
Listen,
tell you, but you've
yes.
turned into a pot.
It's
I
a
like
beautiful
this.
one.
It's
Is it
beautiful.
It's a beautiful pot, but you're getting well rounded.
It's not a pot.
I don't know. I can't see the picture, but
It's cool.
well, I'm
nice
glad
think
you
so
like
too.
it, Rodney.
I think it's Celtic.
Don't have to put up with my voice. I'll have to check what kind of picture it is.
All right.
This is a very old phone. I keep dropping my new. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It is the way it is. Okay. The significance of this remarkable doing can the better be understood when we record the fact that out of this group of 32 Jesus taught religious leaders in Rome, only 2 were unfruitful. The 30 became pivotal individuals in the establishment of Christianity in Rome, and certain of them also aided in turning the chief Mithriac temple into the first Christian church in that city. We who view human activities from behind the scenes and in the light of 19 centuries of time recognize just 3 factors of paramount value in the early setting of the stage for the rapid spread of Christianity throughout Europe, and they are.
Okay, I want to point something out before we move off this paragraph, and that's the fact that 2 out of the 30 some did not believe what Jesus said. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not 100%, is it? So no matter what we do, when we teach the Urantia book, we're going to have a percentage that are just not going to be open to it. That's just all there is to it. Just like Jesus, when he taught people, you can bring truth to people and enlightenment to people, but if they're not willing to accept it, there's not a thing you can do about it.
Right.
Not one thing, right? You just go on. All right, Pam, would you take the next one here? Let me change the slide.
Sure. The choosing and holding of Simon Peter as an apostle. The talk in Jerusalem with Stephen, whose death led to the winning of Saul of Tarsus. The preliminary preparation of these 30 Romans for the subsequent leadership of the new religion in Rome and throughout the empire.
Okay, I want to go back to the previous. This is what they say is what set the stage for the rapid spread of Christianity. Okay, so these are the three things. First, the choosing of Peter as an apostle, and why is that? Because even though Andrew was the head of the apostle, Peter was the most forceful preacher and what he considered the rock. He was the most steady of all the apostles that the whole early Christian church depended upon to help get things started. Okay. And then Stephen, because Stephen was killed, Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, was influenced into converting to Christianity himself. And we know that the things that Paul did, in which helped spread the Christian message, because Paul was, a headstrong preacher. And if it wasn't for the atonement doctrine, he would have done more for the world than any person before anybody, right? But he had to stick that atonement doctrine in there, which alienated so many different religions.
Yes, it did.
All right. Then we have this teaching that Jesus did while he was in Rome, and it prepared the people there for the coming of the Christian missionaries, prepared their minds. So that helped the spreading of the gospel and Christianity through Rome.
And it's interesting because Melchizedek did the same thing.
Same exact thing. That's right.
Prepared the way.
Prepared the way, didn't he? Rodney, would you take this next one? Then I'll take the one after that.
Okay, no problem. Through all of their experiences, neither Stephen nor the 30 chosen ones ever realized that they had once talked with a man whose name became the subject of their religious teaching. Jesus' work in behalf of the original 32 was entirely personal. In his labors for these individuals, the scribe of Damascus never met more than 3 of them at one time, seldom more than 2. Almost often, he taught them singly. And he could do this great work of religious training because these men and women were not tradition bound. They were not victims of a settled preconception as to all future religious developments.
Okay, there's two subjects here I want to mention. First of all, Stephen. Stephen, Jesus met earlier, and Stephen never realized that he met him. Rick, remember that from previous lessons? Okay, so Stephen met Jesus earlier, became a Christian. He was the first Christian that was killed in the name of Christianity.
He was stoned.
He was stoned.
Was that with the arrows?
No, that was, I believe he was stoned to death, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was stoned to death.
Yeah, and Paul saw this, and that's what converted Paul. The other thing I want to mention here is that Jesus never met with any of these 32 people. Remember, 30 of them converted to his thinking, and 2 of them rejected it completely. But these 30 people that he taught one, 2, or 3 at a time. He never taught them all at the same time. So it wasn't like he was meeting in a group or anything like that teaching, was he? He was doing it individually. And that's pretty much what we do when we teach the book most of the time, right? All right. Let's see here. I guess I'm up again. Many were the times in the years so soon to follow that Peter, Paul, and the other Christian teachers in Rome heard about this scribe of Damascus who had preceded them and who had so obviously, and as they're supposedly unwittingly, because he never told any of them that he went to Rome, right? Prepared the way for their coming of this new gospel. Though Paul never really surmised the identity of the scribe of Damascus, he did a short time before his death, because of the similarity of personal descriptions, reach the conclusion that the tent maker of Antioch was also the scribe of Damascus. On one occasion, while preaching in Rome, Simon Peter, on listening to a description of the Damascus scribe, surmised that this individual might have been Jesus, but quickly dismissed the idea, knowing full well, so he thought, that the master had never been in Rome. So he never even told Peter and Andrew that he had gone to Rome.
That's cool.
Kind of interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
One, true values. Let's see here. I'm all discombobulated. Letch, would you take the next one? Letch, you
Okay.
sound like you got a cold too.
Yeah, getting over one.
We all have these summer colds, no?
That time of year.
Yeah.
Okay. True values. It was with Angamon, the leader of the Stoics, that Jesus had an all-night talk early during his sojourn in Rome. This man subsequently became a great friend of Paul and proved to be one of the strong supporters of the Christian church at Rome. In substance and restated in modern phraseology, Jesus taught Angamon.
Okay. So why don't you walk in and get your lozenges? There's some above my toilet. There's a bag in the left-hand bottom corner above my toilet. There's some cherry rings in a bag down in the corner. You'll get several of them. Yeah. Okay, so Jesus taught one of the leaders of the Stoics, Agamon, and this coming up is what they talked about. All right. Jane, would you take the next one?
Did you say Jane?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The standard of true values must be looked for in the spiritual world and on divine levels of eternal reality. To an ascending mortal, all lower and material standards must be recognized as transient, partial, and inferior. The scientist, as such, is limited to the discovery of the relatedness of material facts. Technically, he has no right to assert that he is either materialist or idealist, for in so doing, he has assumed to forsake the attitude of a true scientist, since any and all such assertions of attitude are the very essence of philosophy.
Okay, there's several things in this that needs to be brought out. Number one, all the standards that we believe and we developed in the material world is not lasting. Okay, these are all transient, partial, and inferior. Now, why are they transient, partial, and inferior? Because when we step into the Urantia existence, the next existence up, I'm hearing myself here. Hang on a second. See if that helps. When we step to the next, whoops, I missed it. When we step to the next existence up into the Urantia existence, all these things that we have learned as material standards change significantly. Okay, so all these things we hang on to in this world may change dramatically when we go from the material to the Urantia, because we're going from a totally finite look into a Urantia destination or look of the universe. So what Jesus is talking about here as a materialist or an idealist, what they're doing when they're saying things are just like they believe they are, the whole finite world is the basis of everything, they're discounting all existences outside the finite. So when they do that, their philosophy is what? In error.
Yeah.
Their total philosophy. And we see that in our existence today. You know, when we look through the Hubble telescope or the Webb telescope or any of these, we see a finite world out there of material things because we know all the planets are what? Material, right? So that means they all exist within this finite ideal. So when you make assumptions of everything that's going on in the finite world, you're missing the total assumptions of the reality of the Urantia, spiritual, absonite, and absolute existences. You're
Correct.
missing them all, right? So if you base all of your science on a finite assumption, then you're missing the whole point of the other 6 levels of existence.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's why when we study the 7 absolutes, that's why it becomes so important, because the 7 absolutes integrates all 7 levels also of reality itself. And if you can't understand all 7 levels of the absolute, you can never understand the 7 levels of existence, not only material, but Urantia, spiritual, absonite, absolute. Did I miss one? Right? Y'all see where I'm coming from there?
Yes.
Okay, so your science has to be based on all of it because it is the essence of philosophy itself.
Correct.
That's a long explanation, isn't it?
Hmm.
Okay, let's move on. Pam, I think you're up next.
Okay. Unless the mortal insight and the spiritual attainment of mankind are proportionately augmented, the unlimited advancement of a purely materialistic culture may eventually become a menace to civilization. A purely materialistic science harbors within itself the potential seed of the destruction of all scientific striving. For this very attitude presages the ultimate collapse of a civilization which has abandoned its sense of moral values and has repudiated its spiritual goal of attainment.
Okay, so the entire collapse of civilization could happen because of this lack of moral insight of the spiritual attainment in life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does.
So because you don't develop your own spiritual life and you're attached totally to the finite life, what happens? Things like artificial intelligence gets developed without any moral values instilled in it. And what do you end up? You can end up with destruction of the civilization itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I talked about this in the video I did. I didn't talk about it. I did I wrote the background for it for a podcast. And it talks about how not controlling AI is not only morally wrong, but it's our moral responsibility to instill moral judgments within AI, and it will never have a soul, so it will never be a sentient being. Okay?
Correct.
Right.
And that's important to understand. And that's exactly what Jesus is talking about here. If our moral insight misses our spiritual attainment, then no matter how advanced a materialistic culture goes, it can become its own menace to its own civilization. That makes sense?
Yes.
It's amazing his potential for understanding these things 2,000 years ago. Of course, he'd been around for 1 billion years, so over
Yeah.
1 billion years. You know, I think he had more insight than we do. Okay, I think I'm up again, then we'll get back on track here. The materialistic scientists and the extreme idealists are destined always to be at loggerheads. This is not true of those scientists and idealists who are in possession of a common standard of high moral values and spiritual test levels. In every age, scientists and religionists must recognize they are on trial before the bar of human need. Did y'all catch that?
Mhm.
They must eschew all warfare between themselves while they strive valiantly to justify their continued survival by enhanced devotion to the human service of to the service of human progress. If the so-called scientist or religion at any age is false, then must it either purify its activities or pass away before the emergence of a material science or a spiritual religion of a truer or more worthy order. In other words, if you don't straighten yourself out, then you're going to pass away to another science or another religion that comes on, and it's going to wipe you out. Okay? Pretty heavy stuff he taught, wasn't it?
Yes.
It's amazing to me how Jesus back then had such a high ideal of what really was going on in the universe from one end to another.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger, he had experience because of the previous 6 bestowals.
That right, and those previous 6 bestowals allowed him to experience certain things that we can't even conceive of, because you think about it this way. If he was Melchizedek and a Lananandek son and an angel and a material at different levels of societies, on different levels of their evolution, he saw it all from the beginning to the end, didn't he?
He could understand on a lower level how
Yeah.
to communicate these advanced ideas.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons he came down for the 7th bestowal, wasn't it? Was to come down to the very, very lowest finite level, the dummies, as we could be called, to try to explain to them how to bring themselves up to a higher level, right?
Right.
So it's really amazing. Would love to sit at his feet and listen to him. It
Oh,
was
of course.
something else.
You skipped
Did I skip
you
over
advanced.
2 of them instead of 1?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Good and evil.
There.
Good and evil. Okay. All right. You're up, Rodney.
Okay. 2, good and evil. Martus was the acknowledged leader of the Cynics in Rome, and he became a great friend of the scribe of Damascus. Day after day, he conversed with Jesus, and night upon night, he listened to his supernal teaching. Among the more important discussions with Martus was the one designed to answer the sincere cynic's question about good and evil. In substance, and in 20th century phraseology, Jesus said,
Now remember, the Cynics of Rome believed that the good was equal to evil. In other words,
correct,
they were opposing forces. They believed evil was just as strong as good, and we know that's not true now, don't we?
correct,
So we have to look at it from that viewpoint, that they believe, just like they do here in this time and age, that there's 2 opposing forces, there's good and there's evil, and they're both equal to each other, and that's not the case at all. Good always overrides evil. Okay, Lech, would you take the next?
Okay. My brother, good and evil are merely words symbolizing relative levels of human comprehension of the observable universe. If you are ethically lazy and socially indifferent, you can take as your standard of good the current social usages. If you are spiritually indolent and morally unprogressive, you may take as your standards of good the religious practices and traditions of your contemporaries. But the soul that survives time and emerges into eternity must make a living and personal choice between good and evil, as they are determined by the true values of the spiritual standards established by the divine Spirit, which the Father in heaven has sent to dwell within the heart of man. This indwelling Spirit is the standard of personality survival.
So he's telling this guy that there is no such thing as an evil that's as strong as good. And that if you want to be lazy, you can take this same concept that your ancestor took and their religious practices and their traditions and just keep going on straight, just like you are right now. Unless you want to be more advanced and more enlightened, then you have to change your concepts of good and evil and prepare yourself, because there's a divine spirit, which is what? That is the thought adjuster, right? The divine spirit is within yourself. I don't know where this blue thing came from, but
Yeah.
that's weird. Anyway, so let's go on to the next one. Jane, would you take the next one? What in the world?
Jane Holloway.
It's like somebody's writing on our screen.
Your AI has gone crazy.
It has maybe.
Jane,
Jane, you out there?
she's on mute.
She may be gone to help her husband or something. Pam, would you take this one since she's
There she is.
there? She is.
Sorry, I don't know what happened to my screen. It went completely crazy.
Oh, okay.
There is writing on it like a pencil. I don't know.
Yeah, that's where we see it. Yeah, there's blue writing on the slide right now. I was wondering where
What
it came
the
from.
heck is that all about? I don't know.
Oh, strange.
Sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead and
I'll
read.
just listen. I'll just listen.
No, go ahead and read. Can you see the
Okay.
Can you see the
I can
text?
see this one, yes.
All right.
Goodness, like truth, is always relative and unfailingly evil contrasted. It is the perception of these qualities of goodness and truth that enables the evolving souls of man to make those personal decisions of choice which are essential to eternal survival.
Yes.
Remember previous lessons we've read that it's decisions that help us grow, right? And that's the decisions we make, and when we decide the way of the thought adjuster, then we're going the right direction. All right, let's go on to the next one. Pam, would you take this one?
The spiritually blind individual who logically follows scientific dictation, social usage, and religious dogma stands in grave danger of sacrificing his moral freedom and losing his spiritual liberty. Such a soul is destined to become an intellectual parrot, a social automaton,
Automaton.
Automaton.
and a slave to religious authority.
That's true.
You become a robot. Do you
Yeah.
not? You just accept whatever everyone tells you in the intellectual society, and so
And
you
that's
just
what most people do.
That's
That's
what they
right.
do. They become parrots of everything that everybody else says, isn't it? Right?
Mhm.
So it's a perfect example of AI, isn't it? Because the AI will regurgitate what it has learned. If you tell it something, it's going to regurgitate that same thing. The nice part about AI is it can take in tons of data. When it regurgitates it out, it makes it sound super intelligent, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because it's able to contain so much data as it does that. But
Mhm.
it's interesting here. Jesus calls it spiritually blind individual who logically follows scientific dictation and social usage. In other words, they're sheep, just what everybody else says.
Mhm.
They just follow them right over the cliff, don't they? you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in our world today. All right. Let's see here. I guess I'm up again, huh? Goodness is always growing toward new levels of increasing liberty of moral self-realization and spiritual personality attainment, the discovery of and identification with the indwelling adjuster. That's so important, right? We keep trying to identify with the adjuster. And the experience is good when it heightens the appreciation of beauty, augments the moral will, enhances the discernment of truth, enlarges the capacity to love and serve one's fellows, exalts the spiritual ideal, and unifies the supreme human motives of time with the eternal plans of the adjuster, all of which lead directly to the increased desire to do the Father's will, thereby fostering the divine passion to find God and be more like Him. Would you call that a run-on sentence? as Millie used to say, the whole paragraph is just one sentence, just about.
Right.
Yeah.
You know. But let's see what he says here, right? As we increase our level of understanding, self-realization, and personality attainment. That's what he's talking about, right? The discovery of the identification of the adjuster. This allows us to learn new moral concepts, love one another more, and do God's will right off the bat, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's as straight as you could be. All right, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. As you ascend the universe scale of creature development, you will find increasing goodness and diminishing evil in perfect accordance with your capacity for goodness experience and truth discernment. The ability to entertain error or experience evil will not be fully lost until the ascending human soul achieves final spirit levels.
So this will not completely change until we actually become full-fledged spirits, right?
Phew.
That's all there is to it.
So, in
By
other
then,
words, through the Urantia state,
through the Urantia state, we're going to increase our goodness and diminish the evil over and over and over, and with each level, right? With each planet as we go up, we'll see less and less evil and more goodness coming into fruition in our existence over
Sure.
time. All right. Powerful stuff here. Letch, would you take the next one, please?
Say me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Goodness is living, relative, always progressing, invariably a personal experience, and everlastingly correlated with the discernment of truth and beauty. Goodness is found in the recognition of the positive truth values of the spiritual level, which must in human experience be contrasted with the negative counterpart, the shadows of potential evil.
So we have to make decisions daily, don't we? To
Mhm.
step away from the evil. That's just all there is to it. That's part of our growing process. And one of the reasons Jesus' seventh bestowal on this lower level of mortals was so that he could experience that struggle between the potential of evil and that which is good. And the only way you can do that is experiencing it by himself. And the only way he could do that is do self-limit his memory of what he was before he became to the earth. Because if he remembered right off the bat that he was the creator's son, all this stuff would mean nothing to him because he couldn't experience it on the finite level. And that's the whole point of why he was here.
Mhm.
right? He
Right.
wouldn't be able to relate it to
He
us.
wouldn't be able to relate to anything, would he? Because he would always be on that higher level as the creator's son.
Mhm.
All right. Jane, can you read this one?
Okay. Until you attain paradise levels, goodness will always be more of a request than a possession, more of a goal than experience of attainment. But even as you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you experience increasing satisfaction in the partial attainment of goodness. The presence of goodness and evil in the world is in itself positive proof of the existence and reality of man's moral will. The personality which thus identifies with these values and is also able to choose between them.
So we can't escape evil, can we? We're
Right.
always going to have to make the decisions between good and evil because that's what we live in the finite existence, this constant battle between that which is good and that which is evil. All right. They're not equals, though. We have to always remember that. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
By the time of the attainment of paradise, the ascending mortals' capacity for identifying the self with true spirit values has become so enlarged as to result in the attainment of the perfection of the possession of the light of life. Such a perfected spirit personality becomes so wholly divinely and spiritually unified with the positive and supreme qualities of goodness, beauty, and truth that there remains no possibility that such a righteous spirit would cast any negative shadow of potential evil when exposed to the searching luminosity of the divine light of the infinite rulers of paradise. In all such spirit personalities, goodness is no longer partial, contrastive, and comparative. It has become divinely complete and spiritually replete. It approaches the purity and perfection of the Supreme.
So we're not automatically perfect, are we, when we get to the mansion worlds?
That's
No.
right.
Not even close. And this is the case all the way through our spirit climbing up through Havona, all the way up till we reach paradise, too. There's always that possibility of the evil that we have been accustomed to in this existence can creep into our consciousness. And we can see that perfect example in that of the Lucifer rebellion, can't we?
Mhm.
Even though these creatures were created on high perfection levels, they still allowed the evil to creep into their existence, but they had to consciously choose that way of life rather than perfection. Do you see what he's saying here?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's a constant thing of choice to choose the
Mhm.
Father's way over and over and over again. All right. The possibility of evil is necessary to moral choosing, but not the actuality thereof. A shadow is only relatively real. Actual evil is not necessary as a personal experience. Potential evil acts equally as well as a decision stimulus in the realms of moral progress on the lower levels of spiritual development. Evil becomes a reality of personal experience only when a moral mind makes evil its choice. So this exactly is why during the Lucifer rebellion, all the beings that were experiencing what was going on, they could see this going on and still not have to be part of it to grow from the experience, did they?
Right.
So those who stayed loyal gained as much as those who chose the evil because they could see it working out in their lives and the results of such potential evil that was going on.
It's that way now too.
It's that way now, too. Diane says it's that way now, too. And that's true. It is. All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. 3, truth and faith. Naban
Yeah.
was a Greek Jew and foremost among the leaders of the chief mystery cult in Rome, the Mithraic. While this high priest of Mithraism held many conferences with the Damascus scribe, he was most permanently influenced by their discussion of truth and faith one evening. Naban had thought to make a convert of Jesus and had even suggested that he return to Palestine as a Mithraic teacher. He little realized that Jesus was preparing him to become one of the early converts to the gospel of the kingdom. Restated in modern phraseology, the substance of Jesus' teaching was.
So Naban thought he could convert Jesus to be a Mithraic priest, didn't he? Little did he know. Okay, Lech, would you take the next one?
Okay. Truth cannot be defined with words, only by living. Truth is always more than knowledge. Knowledge pertains to things observed, but truth transcends such purely material levels in that it consorts with wisdom and embraces such imponderables as human experience, even spiritual and living realities. Knowledge originates in science, wisdom in true philosophy, truth in the religious experience of spiritual living. Knowledge deals with facts, wisdom with relationships, truth with reality values.
You see how Jesus breaks them all down as separate entities, right? Instead of just all in one. All right. Jay, would you take the next one?
There's a lot to remember there.
Yeah.
Man tends to crystallize science, formulate philosophy, and dogmatize truth, but he is mentally lazy in adjusting to the progressive struggles of living, while he is also terribly afraid of the unknown. Natural man is slow to initiate changes in his habits of thinking and in his techniques of living.
What's
Very
the worst
true.
thing we have? Fear, right? Fear
Yeah.
of ridicule by our friends, neighbors, relatives, things like that. Because soon as you start to go on a pathway of unique living, of a religious life, of an enlightened life, what happens? Everyone around you tries to convince you that what? You are wrong, right? And that's the way it is today. That's the way it's been in the past, and that's the way it'll probably always be. But when you start to crystallize these thoughts into a pattern of religious living, okay, because we're afraid and mentally lazy, it's hard for us to stay on that pathway of the Father's will because we do not want to be ridiculed by our friends, relatives, neighbors, things like that.
Peers.
Peers, right? It's a fear factor.
Which is true of children as well.
True of children as well.
yeah.
That's right. Fear is the greatest, what could I say? The greatest retardant to spiritual enlightenment and growing in your life. If you get rid of your fear, then you're more likely to be open to spiritual concepts and things that will benefit you greatly, not only for yourself, but all the fellow people around you, fellow man. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Pam, I believe you're up.
Revealed truth, personally discovered truth, is the supreme delight of the human soul. It is the joint creation of the material mind and the indwelling spirit. The eternal salvation of this truth discerning and beauty loving soul is assured by that hunger and thirst for goodness which leads this mortal to develop a singleness of purpose to do the Father's will, to find God and to become like him. There is never conflict between true knowledge and truth. There may be conflict between knowledge and human beliefs, beliefs colored with prejudice, distorted by fear, and dominated by dread of facing new facts, of material discovery, of spiritual progress.
Now, why would that be, y'all? Why there's this dreaded fear of new facts, material discovery, and spiritual progress? Because then we have to make changes in our existence, don't we? And it's hard to change. Once we've associated with ourselves of living a certain way, it's really, so for some people, it's next to impossible to change, right? All right. But truth can never become man's possession without the exercise of faith. This is true because man's thoughts, wisdom, ethics, and ideals will never rise higher than his faith, his sublime hope, and in all such true faith is predicated on profound reflection, looking at ourselves, right? Sincere self-criticism, and boy, we don't like to do that, do we? And uncompromising moral consciousness. Gosh, I got to give up running around with women and drinking and smoking and oh my goodness, all these good things. Faith is the inspiration of the spiritualized, creative imagination.
Right.
Boy, no one taught like Jesus did, right? No one. Okay, let me see where we are in this real quick. We're on 3:6. Have to look at my other computer. We got
6:56.
Yeah, I think we better quit here and do our prayer, and we'll take this up from this slide next time. Okay?
Time flies when you're having fun.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I never want to stop, but then I'd keep y'all up all night, and then y'all wouldn't be happy with me. Let me find the prayer from this. Okay, here we go. Prayer of acceptance. Pam, would you like to read our prayer of acceptance?
Sure. Prayer of acceptance. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith I became a child of God, and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
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 And thanks everyone for coming to see us tonight. Please come see us again. And don't forget all of our stuff out on YouTube. You can go out, join us, and become a subscriber. You'll find all the other stuff on Vimeo, our website, Facebook. And go look for my new book. It's out on Amazon.
Exactly.
Yeah, go check out my new book. It's on Amazon. It's on sale right now. So, all right, everybody. We will see everybody next time and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Love
Thank you guys for coming. Love you guys too.
Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.